Good morning and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar about evolving your digital workplace. I'm Leslie Mays, one of Neudesic's business productivity team members. Neudesic and Microsoft and Nintex have teamed together to bring you this webinar. It includes some of the session content that's in our National Executive Breakfast series going on right now. We will be in Los Angeles and Irvine next on May 17th and 18th. And heading up to Portland and Seattle on June 13th and 14th. So if you live in those cities, you can see the full schedule and register at neudesic.com. We invite you to join us. 2017 is a big year for Neudesic. We are celebrating 15 years of teaming with partners like you to advance your business technology capabilities. As part of that celebration, we kicked off the year with our 2017 technology vision. And the digital workplace is one of the 4 cornerstone service lines within our tech vision. Everything that we do within the digital workplace is an extension of this vision. And we invite you to read and download the full report at vision.neudesic.com. With us today to share insights on how to evolve your digital workplace is Ken Custis. He's our Director of Technology for the digital workplace at Neudesic. And he's located at our offices in Phoenix. Ken has a depth of experience working with Fortune 500 businesses across nearly every vertical in business automation, custom application development, and especially in enterprise collaboration. His enterprise runs throughout the Microsoft technology stack and cloud offerings. And I welcome you to access his depth of knowledge today and post questions throughout the presentation. We've reserved some time at the end for Ken to give you some feedback and answers and insights on the challenges you're facing. Ken, we're really pleased to have you sharing this information with us today. I hand it off to you to start the presentation.
Thank you, Leslie. Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Evolving the Digital Workplace webinar. I'm excited to have you today and hope that you'll find this strategy session around how to evolve your digital workplace both beneficial and enlightening. As we get started, many organizations and many people in those organizations often ask me, what does it mean, digital workplace? What does that mean for me in my business? What does that mean for me in my job? And I often point them to this concept. The first thing you do when you wake up is oftentimes look at your smartphone. Many of us check for emails. We look for our schedule, looks like today. Maybe we see a reminder that you never approved a sales presentation, so you open the email, you view the document on your phone, you reply with an approve, and it completes that workflow. Other scenarios are when you're driving to work. You may be driving on the way there, and your digital personal assistant proactively informs you that your coworker, Carrie, sent you a meeting that conflicts with another meeting on your calendar. But you're both available at 4 p.m. today, and it asks you if you'd like to reschedule, and safely through Bluetooth, voice, natural language, you tell it, yes, go ahead and reschedule. And while you're in the office, you're searching for recent work at a large client, and your search results bring up that Howard, as a sales rep, recently has projects that relate to that type of work and has a description of the trends of the fashion industry and how that relates back to the industry that you're looking into for that particular client. And so you coordinate with him and collaborate around what his sales team could do, what projects they've had, and how you can leverage that to better support your client and what you're trying to do more recently in the efforts that you're trying to accomplish. Or perhaps then in the afternoon, your spouse texts you and reminds you to pick up your daughter's birthday cake on the way home for the party tonight. You ask your personal assistant to remind you that as you get near the bakery on the way home to promptly pull off and pick that up. All of these elements are examples of how technology is impacting our day-to-day lives, how it's becoming pervasive in every aspect. And that is very much a part of what we're talking about today and how that impacts your enterprise. In fact, in an enterprise, we use the term revolution because the groundswell is taking place in today's workplace. People are learning because of this technology being so pervasive that there's other ways they should be working, other ways they could be working, and are actively looking to take that advantage in their workplace. One example of this are rigid hierarchical organizations that are being replaced by agile cross-functional teams that form quick, create value, and move on to the next challenge. Across the hundreds of enterprises we at Neudesic have assisted, we've seen this trend in nearly every industry. For example, one obvious industry, retail. In retail, if you're creating a product, you need to know as much about the consumer's view of your product as possible if you wish to be successful in the next iteration. So as a product team member, you don't just work within your own organizational structure of the product team. You interact with customer service. You try to understand what is the feedback from customers. You interact with the marketing team to review what's the placement like for our product in the store locations. What kind of advertising are we doing? What's the feedback from those channels? And you incorporate this knowledge from those cross-functional teams in collaboration into the next iteration of your product. Other industries are seeing the same trend, however, that may not be so obvious. Take aerospace. Aerospace has lots of different coordinated groups that work in their own silos for intensive purposes, such as mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, propulsion engineering, and so on. This vehicle you see here is intended for the space program to take us back to the moon and to Mars. I worked for a few years, better half of 5 years, in the aerospace industry almost a decade ago, and I can tell you that collaboration and cross-functional teams are critical for success. In fact, I recall one failure of a company in aerospace that had a catastrophic failure trying to take a multi-million-dollar satellite, multi-hundred-million-dollar satellite into space. And that failure occurred because every organization passed their own unique tests for their organizational structures, but did not collaborate sufficiently enough to know how their cross-functional impact would have on different environmental scenarios. A planned ordinance failed to have the impact that was needed, and the vehicle ultimately crashed into the Pacific Ocean. Simple failures like that can occur if cross-functional teams are not collaborating sufficiently. Another industry we see this in is healthcare. In a hospital, you have dedicated areas of focus, the ICU, neonatal, radiology. All of these are obvious in their delineations and what they're trying to serve in their patients. However, nurses often find that there is a significant improvement in what they can do in their individual spaces if they create what they call value add teams, having cross-functional collaboration across these different groups, ultimately driving better health care to the patients. This kind of collaboration and these groundswells that we'll talk about here in the upcoming aspects of the presentation demand a new set of solutions that support this fluid means of work. Enterprise tools need to enable us to work how we feel is most beneficial, not dictate the mechanism by which we work. Contrast that to today's scenario in most enterprises. Here's a few statistics. 72% of business stakeholders believe IT is not helping them achieve their goals, according to Gartner. Put another way, 72% of digital workplaces aren't meeting the business needs. Well, why is that? Well, that's the second stat. 83% of a typical IT budget is used to maintain existing systems. It's difficult to keep up with changes in the business needs and demand when 83% of your budget is simply keeping the lights on. So how's that impacting our enterprises today? Well, that's the 70% at the bottom. Gartner predicts by 2021 that more than 70% of business users will be substantially provisioned with Cloud Office capabilities. Gartner does not define Cloud Office as just the Microsoft Office suite, being able to chat with people and view documents, but instead Cloud Office capabilities are defined as what you do on a day-to-day basis in your office. Your ability to work with team members, your access to key information, your access to client information, all that you do within your office capabilities will be substantially provisioned by cloud capabilities. Up to 70% of businesses will have such by 2021. And that's ultimately what we're seeing from these trends and these numbers. Business leaders are being forced to identify, source, and deploy their own solutions. They do this to support changing business and employee needs, and they are increasingly turning to the cloud for their answers. The cloud has enabled significant access to new tools and functionality that previously wasn't available to business leaders, and they're taking advantage of these tools themselves. This trend we refer to as the democratization of tools and applications. This democratization, having access to pick and choose what you wish, helps organizations to be empowered, to move quicker, to make better decisions and drive innovation. Having access to Slack, to Box, to Office 365 has driven them in a direction that they didn't have in the past. They have the ability now to better collaborate, to move quicker, and therefore drive innovation. But as a whole, this democratization of tools can also be very disruptive to an enterprise in its holistic viewpoint of a digital workplace. For example, we see that trend of democratization in both small and large organizations. One such large organization of consumer products had recently placed a public request for proposal seeking assistance in resolving their severed continuity across the organization because of this democratization of tools. In that request for proposal, they listed that they had Jive, Slack, Jabber, Yammer, SharePoint 2010, SharePoint Online, OneDrive for Business, Box.com, Link, and Skype for Business, Outlook, and Chatter, all operating across the same organization. You can imagine their ability to share global sales assets or to be able to coordinate different initiatives was next to impossible, or at least very time-consuming and expensive because of this democratization of tools. Each individual business unit had had great success, but the continuity as a whole was suffering. So there's a lot of pros and cons to this trend with the democratization of tools and applications that must be considered when going through your analysis of your own enterprise and how you can leverage business enablement or transformation. When tools work together, it causes an empowered, highly agile workforce that naturally leverages computing environments to increase collaboration, innovation, and culture, ultimately unlocking the potential of your people. This is what we refer to as the digital workplace. Technology that works in a natural way aligned to your business and empowers your workforce. The idea that people choose how to work, that tools empower them in a natural way. An empowered agile workforce may not sound like your digital workplace, however. So how do we get there? Well, if you're looking to evolve your digital workplace to that state, you need to understand two primary focuses of what a digital workplace supports. And they are two types of work across your enterprise: routine work and fluid work. Routine work, as the name implies, is defined as activities and processes that are well known with predictable outcomes. This work is usually governed by laws and regulation that demand consistent execution with little room for innovation. We see this in every enterprise, things like accounting, receivables, call centers, reservation centers. These are all crucial for your business. They're absolutely critical. Everyone needs to do this. However, it doesn't drive differentiation or advancement in your market. These things are not where your cognitive ability of your employees should be focused. That doesn't mean employees should not be the ones doing them. Automation can be very benefited in this space. But instead, it's not that it's automated that's important so much as the fact that you are not exposing a lot of your employee cognitive energy here, but instead, and in contrast, in areas of fluid work. Fluid work is where core cognitive ability and social practice is absolutely crucial and defines digital business success. Product design, project execution, marketing plans, strategic planning. These are all critical for market differentiation and competitive advantage. Digital workplace leaders should assess their organization's digital dexterity against projected requirements and implement a strategy to attract the optimum mix of talent. Fluid work is essentially what drives your business forward. This is where people's ability to think critically is so crucial. This is where you want your workforce focusing all of their energy, not just how am I doing my job or what are the steps of my job, but how can I do my job better? What ideas and innovation can I bring to my organization, as opposed to routine work, where it's just a matter of making sure you do it well. We see this in many industries, but one large example of this is in the healthcare industry. Many of you probably have heard of the Affordable Health Care Act. The Affordable Health Care Act had many impactful areas in healthcare. There were fines associated with organizations who are not able to respond to requests quickly enough and able to process them sufficiently enough in a time period dictated by the government within this act. If they did not respond quickly enough, those fines could equate to the tune of tens of millions of dollars annually for these organizations. This had a dramatic impact across organizations in the healthcare. Doctors, nurses, these physicians were focusing now instead on what the patient needs, on did I submit the right form? Did I fill that form out correctly? Did it go to the right person? What was that form again? Where do I find that? These types of mental energies were being focused on routine work, things that were already defined to have predictable outcomes, but instead, because of this change in regulation and the business's lack of digital dexterity to respond to it, they had to think through a lot of the energy of their mental capacity was focused on how to accomplish those tasks instead of the fluid work of, am I providing the right health care to my patient? Digital dexterity, or your ability to handle tasks sufficiently and responsively, is critical in driving fluid work forward. That may sound simple, being able to have the ability to respond, but many organizations struggle with this because a digital workplace is not a single application, but instead is an ecosystem of applications that strongly influence the effectiveness of an organization more than any single business application. It must be a set of intelligent, cohesive applications that combine to establish a greater whole. That empowers the workforce, being able to do the job for customer information and for process efficiencies and for different policies that need to be enforced. Having those cohesively combined empowers that workforce, changes culture, and transforms your business. Again, it may sound simple, but when you look at the breadth of what a day in the life of an employee looks like, many of these tools are spread across your organization and may not be seamlessly integrated. Concepts such as work anywhere, anytime, mobile everything, service automation, file syncing and sharing or having cloud office capabilities, a social intranet or enterprise social networking, or the new themes of citizen analytics and citizen development, empowering the business to get that information and make their changes as they need to, which is critical for lean and other thought processes for optimization. All of these different elements and ideas exist across your digital workplace. They have technology or multiple technologies associated with each. Do these technologies support your way of working? Do they support the business way of working? That is the critical question in identifying what your strategy should be in a digital workplace. But it doesn't stop there. Interestingly enough, integration and seamless continuity across applications is only one trend in the digital workplace. You can contrast consumer technologies to enterprise technologies to find a very interesting trend taking place as well. It was the case 10 years ago that we'd go into our offices and we were all thrilled to see our technology. We had those brand new LCD flat screen monitors and these large towers with DVD burners, and we were very excited about the capabilities we had 10 years ago at our office locations. Fast forward to today in 2017, and you start to see that being flip-flopped. Now we have applications and technologies at home, tablets, smartphones, applications that are streamlined, digital personal assistants like the Amazon Echo on the screen. These have shifted such that we have a lot more capability at home, and we go home and we wish, man, I wish I had this capability at my work office. Why can't I do it this simple at work? For example, digital personal assistants, whether that's Apple's Siri, Google's Google Assistant, Microsoft's Cortana, or Amazon's Echo or the Alexa capabilities, are very much in contrast to what we have on the enterprise space when it comes to knowledge management. For consumer knowledge management, I simply ask a targeted question and I get a targeted response. When is Memorial Day? Alexa would respond back, tell me, Memorial Day is on Monday, the 29th of May. Okay, why do we celebrate Memorial Day? Again, Alexa would respond back with a description of the history of Memorial Day and why we celebrate that. We can think through and say, okay, Alexa, ask 1-800-Flowers to order a flower bouquet for my grandpa's gravesite, who was a veteran of World War II. We can not only ask questions, but also initiate tasks and automation very simply and very streamlined in the consumer world. And in contrast to the enterprise world, it's quite stark. If you, on that vein of thinking about a holiday, may think, hey, Alexa, how many days vacation do I have left? More often than not, organizations don't have that ability to answer that question very targetedly, and a digital personal assistant may not even exist in your enterprise, leaving the Amazon Echo to say, I don't know how to answer that. Let alone complex business questions that are even more valuable, such as, ask my business how much digital workplace revenue we've generated from the government and public services sector in Q1 of 2017. Alexa often has no answer for that simply because our enterprises haven't integrated those capabilities. They haven't thought through consumer knowledge, enterprise knowledge, the same way consumer organizations have for their consumer knowledge. But the technology is there. The capability is there. And consumers are drastically changing their thought processes and expectations on how they should gather knowledge in the enterprise because of that contrast in the consumer world, particularly in the vein of millennials. As millennials take more and more placement in the workforce, these kinds of mentalities are absolutely critical. A recent study found that millennials in the workplace have a much higher demand for technology. In fact, the study found that over 50% of millennials would rather give up their sense of smell than their technology. Think about that. They'd give up one of their senses as opposed to the technology. The enterprise technology space is going to become a critical differentiating point for their job selection, where they want to work. Recruiting top talent is becoming more and more difficult if you don't have the latest and greatest capabilities that align to the demands and expectations of your workforce. And the consumer world innovating ahead of the enterprise world is an example of one trend to be aware of when looking through your digital workplace strategy. As such, getting to the point where you have the most cohesive technology that empowers your workforce in a natural way, that allows you to recruit top talent, takes an evolution. There's no 18-month process we can point you to and say, if you follow these 18 steps, one per month, you will have the best digital workplace possible. Nor is there one set of technology we can point you to and say, if you use digital personal assistants, you'll maximize all capabilities across knowledge management. That is simply not the case. Those are mere examples in that complex web I showed a moment ago of areas of focus where you could have digital workplace impact. But to get there, you really need to think through the concept of evolving. Not a big bang transformation, but instead changes over time that help you to improve different focal points of your business and drive impact in those areas. To assist in this, we've created a capability maturity model for the digital workplace. If you're trying to measure the maturity of a digital workplace, you actually measure your workforce, ensuring that they have what they need. They are the core. If you remember earlier, empowering your people is the prime objective of a digital workplace. So when looking at the maturity, there are 4 primary columns that we look at, or 4 primary steps in the maturity model. First is common, and we use the word common intentionally because this is very much what many organizations fit into. In a common workforce, they have limited to no use of digital workplace technologies and guiding principles. The key there being the and guiding principles. They may have technologies, but they may not have guiding principles. You may have guiding principles, but you have legacy technology. This is very common in today's workforce, and that is the baseline of a maturity for your digital workplace. Without guiding principles and technology together, organizations are limited. Contrast that to a responsive digital workplace, where the workforce has digital workplace solutions available to them, which are selected and implemented based on changing needs, but are often driven by a small faction within the enterprise. This is also very common, where organizations say, oh yeah, we have these great tools, but only this group is using them. IT organizations often struggle and beat their head against the wall trying to understand, why does this one group use this tool, but the rest of the organization does not? What can we do about that? In my experience, the majority of organizations fit somewhere between common and responsive in their digital workplace maturity. Contrasting that, however, to empowered, that's where business and IT are actively engaged in seeking opportunities to engage digital workplace leaders to support that fluid work concept, automating routine work and helping cognitive ability be focused towards fluid work. And finally, transformative. Digital workplace applications and principles are naturally working the way the business wishes them to work. Individuals, teams, and groups work together on fluid work, supported by technology, resulting in better decisions, better ideas, and better execution. 4 simple maturity steps in the digital workplace maturity model. However, digital workplaces are much more complex than being measured in such a simplistic model, so we need to break it apart slightly further. To understand your digital workplace and your current state is critical in knowing where to evolve, where to innovate moving forward. So let's continue in understanding this current state assessment maturity model by focusing on the 3 capabilities that any digital workplace supports. First, knowledge. Also, collaboration. And finally, process. These 3 capabilities are fundamental to any digital workplace, and as such can be applied to that maturity model. Organizations may be very mature on the knowledge side of how they coordinate knowledge internally, how they share knowledge to their customers or gather knowledge from their customers, but very immature at the same time on how they collaborate around that knowledge. Or again, very mature or immature on how they handle processes. What I show you today on the screen are some examples of what that means. An organization who has a common maturity on knowledge management usually has relationship-based practices on how they share knowledge. You want to know how many days leave vacation you have left? You go to the person in HR who you know can answer that question. You have a question on what the policy is regarding a certain procedure, you go to the person you know who has that answer. A responsive organization, in contrast, has that centralized, a place to go to find that information. Whereas empowered, it becomes more self-service and social. Social knowledge is not social networking. Social knowledge is where knowledge is sourced and shared at the top and the bottom and throughout the enterprise. Being able to gather policies from the top and the leadership is important, but recognizing what actually works in the field is equally important in many industries. Having the ability to share that knowledge across everybody who needs it in a governed, structured way that is secure and prevents intellectual property loss empowers your digital workplace and your workforce associated with it. And a transformative workforce in the knowledge area is where knowledge becomes ambient and proactive. Ambient lighting, for example, is lighting that you don't necessarily think about. It's there, it's present, it does its job, but it's not obtrusive or intrusive. Contrast that to, or compare that to knowledge that's ambient. Ambient knowledge is naturally accessible. It presents itself sometimes even intelligently to you when you need it, as opposed to going out of your way to have to discover where to find information, reading through a document. If you want to be able to know the policy for how many days in advance you should submit your leave request form, you often have to find what's the centralized portal again. Do I search there? Do I navigate a mega menu? Once I find it, is it a document that I then have to read 18 paragraphs to be able to find my answer? Contrast that to that Alexa example a moment ago where I simply ask a question and I get a very tailored, direct response. Knowledge can be very transformative when it becomes ambient, proactive, and self-service and social. I won't go through all these examples today, but contrast that to collaboration or process. Look at your own enterprise. Where are you mature? Where are you immature? This will help your current state assessment in recognizing where your opportunities for innovation are across your digital workplace. Should we focus on improving knowledge and how we gather knowledge from customers, how we share knowledge to our customers, how we share knowledge as an enterprise? Or are our processes what get in the way? Is our digital dexterity so low that when regulation changes, such as the example of the Affordable Care Act, are we able to respond fast enough? Are we able to focus on the core abilities of fluid work, or are we getting sucked away back into the routine work and trying to think through how to automate or how to go through a certain process? By going through this maturity model as an organization, you can quickly identify what areas of focus are important. We've seen this at a large media organization that was looking to improve their digital workplace. They leveraged that maturity model to understand their current state and maturity in order to identify where they should invest funds in maturing their digital workplace. What they found in that exercise was actually very enlightening. As a global entity in many different countries, they found that it's actually their tax group that was much in need of improved automation and tracking. By improving that automation and that process capabilities and understanding of the knowledge associated with that, they were able to get a significantly high return on investment, something that may not have been obvious to the organization as a whole. They focused on that and they found those benefits by focusing on that area. They then went back to the maturity model and identified the next area of evolution should be their leadership office needing improved collaboration capabilities. And after accomplishing that, they finally went back and understood that their knowledge management between IT and the rest of the organization could be improved and moved forward across that vein. And as they did such, they slowly moved up step by step. It's important to recognize that an evolution doesn't take place overnight. You don't jump from common to transformative. Instead, you need to evolve piece by piece, having the sum of the parts being greater as a whole than they are individually. This process drives impact in ways organizations never realize. It's not just a matter of the individual concepts that you're evolving, but instead it can have significant cultural impact as an organization, starting from the bottom to the top. An organization that has a culture that's slow to change may need to have a higher digital dexterity because of regulation changes, because of the desire to leverage lean initiatives. By empowering the business to have that control, not just over how a process is done, but how they can change that process through an automated system, can actually change a culture from analysis paralysis to a bias for action, because they're no longer complaining about, I can't get this job done, this is in my way, it doesn't work the way I want to, but instead feel they have the tools available to them to make that change. to adjust it to a way that impacts their business, and culturally they develop a bias for action. So when the next problem comes along, they take action immediately themselves. Obviously, governance and structure from IT is critical for this, and it's a big part of your strategy, and we'll talk about that momentarily. But these cultural benefits of having employees shift to engaged, empowered workforces, or knowledge silos transition to knowledge ecosystems, having repeating work become institutional knowledge, having ideas no longer just come from the top but are democratized across your enterprise, these types of cultural changes transform a business and can significantly impact your ability to recruit top talent and also your cognitive ability that's available for differentiation in the market. This is where a digital workplace has the most impact to your organization. Now, that being said, where do we start? When starting on a digital workplace, you need to have a roadmap. We could spend many hours discussing the continuity of a roadmap and success, but ultimately the concept of knowing where you want to go is critical, which is why we just discussed that maturity model and current state assessment. If you know what your current state is, you likely can contrast that to where you want to go and start road mapping how to get there. Concepts of modernizing your knowledge, transforming your processes, modernizing your collaboration are all components of a digital workplace roadmap. When creating a roadmap, there are scientific processes you can follow, such as user research, journey mapping, and so on. Journey mapping especially has proven very beneficial for identifying what areas of innovation exist in your business, and within a matter of days or weeks, you can have very clearly defined not just what those processes and areas of focus are, but what the metrics are associated with them, and therefore gives you the ability to recognize what the ROI is that's tied to your digital workplace roadmap. All too often, organizations look at their intranet as an example of a digital workplace, and they think, our intranet's out of date. It's not very useful. It's hard to find information. Let's go ahead and modernize that. And they pick the 12 different areas of focus and they go and improve that through their new SharePoint Online intranet. And while that can be very beneficial, what many organizations don't realize is how to measure ROI associated with that. By identifying the key components in detail of your current state and where you'd like to go, you start recognizing areas of focus in the business that we call themes. And it allows you, with these themes, to recognize what points of the business are really being addressed, how they're impacted, and by recognizing how they're impacted, you recognize the ROI. An example of such themes that you can find in a roadmap is work anytime, anywhere. Most organizations in today's enterprise need the ability to be connected 24/7. So mobile accessibility to critical information is important. However, it's every other day that we seem to see enterprises being hacked. So enterprise security with mobile work anytime, anywhere is also very critical. Thinking that through from a digital workplace can be daunting to many organizations and their leaders. But when you break apart the themes and the concepts that are impacting the business, it can help you recognize where to start. When you look at work anytime, anywhere, mobile, everything stands out as obvious. Cloud Office also can stand out, the ability to have access to files and systems remotely. Enterprise social networking, social intranets, the ability to collaborate as an enterprise may stand out. The concept of appification. Appification is the ability to take existing platforms, SAP, CRM, and so on, and simply creating a new experience for mobile, not creating a dedicated separate application. So what you're doing is you're simply appifying the existing platform to be accessible securely and optimized for mobile without significant investment in actually creating mobile capabilities. That's a trend that Nintex, our partner on this webinar, has great tools and technology to support. Microsoft, with their Office 365 and Azure capabilities, also provide great tools for appification, simplifying how you can access information securely and in a governed way by IT while giving that benefit of remote accessibility. Virtual desktop, file syncing and sharing, even physical workplace design may all come up in your assessment and understanding of what comes into place with the work anytime, anywhere theme. When you do this and you recognize this theme across the business, you can start seeing what pieces of technology to start with. You can recognize, okay, Cloud Office, file syncing and sharing, intranet, appification. Microsoft has Office 365 and Azure capabilities. Which of those components fit to this? Okay, we need to focus first on Power Apps or Nintex App Mobile Suite. Whatever the case may be, we can drive forward that change through technology only once we've identified the appropriate themes and therefore maximizing the touch points. This is not just beneficial with one theme by itself. When you're doing a roadmap, you often need to identify multiple themes. So let's look at a second theme. I already mentioned digital dexterity, the core employee cognitive ability that defines their success. Can they respond quickly to do their tasks? Lean initiatives often fail because the enterprise spends the time recognizing where to focus, how to focus it, sets a timeline of the change that they want to implement and measures that. But the tools that support that change cannot respond as quickly as the lean initiative. And the lean initiative, therefore, is not able to drive the change as rapidly, failing fast like they're hoping to, and analyzing it successfully. Digital dexterity is a measurement of that ability to move quickly and adjust quickly. So when assessing your digital dexterity as a theme, you may recognize different touch points in your digital workplace, such as project collaboration, again, social networking, but also concepts like citizen analytics and citizen development. The concept that the business themselves has the ability to pick and choose what data to run analytics on, or the business themselves has simplified tools that allow them to develop the changes in processes, the changes in operation that they need as a business. Having the ability to give them tools that support that type of work while still enforcing the proper governance and security is an important recognition of where to focus. But although those may be obvious, there are still concepts like cloud office, file sync and sharing, and application that may play a role here as well. And as you go through across multiple themes like the work anywhere, anytime, digital dexterity, and so on, you start seeing continuity of different areas of focus that overlap and therefore will have the highest value to your enterprise. Looking at those concepts and thinking through the technology that could be applied to that is the most effective way of driving change in an efficient budget across the digital workplace. And you do that in the concept of creating a digital workplace strategy. The strategy is simply a matter of spending the days and perhaps a few weeks, depending on how complex and deep you need to go, and identifying those areas of innovation, the opportunities for benefit, the prioritization of their impact, and the technologies associated with that, so that now you can have a roadmap of what to implement and exactly where you expect the business impact to be associated with those changes. Neudesic offers scientific approaches toward digital workplace road mapping, such as user research and journey mapping, which can quickly identify the most impactful areas of improvement and opportunities for innovation. We also can apply a suite of proven digital workplace apps to the identified areas of improvement, accelerating your evolution and driving impactful business improvement. Whether you're doing the journey mapping and planning yourself, or whether you need guidance on how to do that, our experts are there to make sure you do this. Neudesic is often engaged for the implementation aspects of technology. If you have done this exercise up front, you will have a lot more success, whether we've done that with you or not. And so we want to make sure and encourage all enterprises to look through their digital workplace roadmap. Make sure that their executives' strategies are aligned to this roadmap, and that they can ultimately exercise the appropriate prioritization of improvements across their digital workplace, as opposed to simply focusing on the squeaky wheel or the enterprise group that has the loudest voice. By mitigating those concerns and those barriers and focusing on your roadmap with scientific approaches such as journey mapping, you can quickly recognize the ROI associated with that and justify budget spending accordingly. You can also ensure that you drive success when you align the technical implementations, and you can have continuity of your technology across the enterprise suite so that organizations aren't selecting their own disparate tools, therefore driving collaboration and continuity as an enterprise across the whole, evolving step-by-step of process, step-by-step in collaboration, and step-by-step on knowledge through that maturity model, and driving ultimately the transformation and empowerment of your people, shifting from routine work to fluid work, and allowing them to meet the needs of the business as they arrive. These concepts, this approach, and this strategy will help you make complex simple. The idea of all these technical components working together, how they need to work together, where to start, and what the right area of focus will be is the main objective of a digital workplace strategy and why you're trying to evolve that. And it is our experience over hundreds and hundreds of different digital workplace engagements with hundreds of different enterprise individuals. We have found that this strategy is what dictates the most success or failure, depending on whether they adhere to it or simply go dive in head first, thinking on technology only as the means for solutions. I would like to take the time now as we go through this concept of digital workplace strategies and how you can leverage these capabilities to answer your questions. So please feel free at this time to enter your questions here in the chat itself. You have the ability to type that We will see that. It's not a public share of questions, so don't be embarrassed that you'll be asking the wrong question. Feel free to ask any time, and I'll take the time now to answer any of those questions you may have.
Ken, I'm going to help moderate a little bit here with some of the questions that have been coming in. One of the first ones, and I know you just touched on a little bit, but someone was asking, so where exactly are the best places to start that you're seeing from our work in the digital workplace?
Can you repeat that one more time, Leslie?
Where exactly are the best places to start?
So when it comes to starting on a digital workplace, that is the value that the digital workplace roadmap applies. Many organizations think they understand, oh, we just need to collaborate better, or there's a particular set of processes that need to be automated, and they're likely correct. But that may not be the right place to start, and therefore you may not see the evolution of your digital workplace maturity if you don't know if it is the most impactful area. I have other case studies we can discuss in the future, particularly if you're interested in attending our executive breakfast in Southern California or in the Pacific Northwest that was mentioned earlier on. We go in a little bit more detail of examples of this. But the digital workplace roadmap, particularly if you start it with journey mapping, helps you identify the value you'll receive by focusing on these areas. We also have business consultants on the digital business consulting front who can compare to the marketplace and what your competitors are doing and help you assess this is exactly what will be most impactful. A mobile strategy will drive change to your business higher than anything else you do. Or maybe it is the ability to collaborate, but it's not the ability to collaborate from marketing telling you about upcoming events, but instead it's the ability for your global sales team to be able to share assets and share what's working, what's not working. Having that kind of analysis and understanding the problems well enough is critical to having successful evolution in the digital workplace. And starting with exercises like journey mapping when creating your roadmap, help lay out the prioritization by value provided to the business and also considering the barrier to entry and getting it rolled out. By looking at that process, you can have a significant improvement on what impact is seen by the business itself, and therefore opens up opportunities for further advancement, such as budget openings and so on, for enterprises to move forward in that space. Great question.
Okay, we've had a couple questions on variances of how do you identify ROI and how do you measure ROI?
Great question. I touched on this briefly. Digital workplace ROI is one of the hardest things for enterprises to understand. Too often they look at knowledge management and they simply say, it's hard to find in our enterprise, so people spend 5 minutes a day trying to find a document. If we can speed that up to be a few seconds instead of 5 minutes, 5 minutes a day per individual for so many individuals in the organization equates to so many $1 million a year. And that's how they measure their ROI. And while that could be reality, you don't know if that 5 minutes is actually being put towards productive use or if it's being squandered on a different system. And so it's really a soft ROI that organizations come up with. And the reasons they do that is because they're not taking the time to, typically IT is not taking the time to recognize the areas of the business that are being touched upon by these evolution changes to their digital workplace. When you go through the exercise of journey mapping, I know I'm repeating that a lot, but it's because it's heavily impactful to organizations in the road mapping stage. When you go through journey mapping, you understand the specific areas of the business and what they're focusing on. Samsung's a great example of where they were looking to revamp their sales asset capabilities, but they stopped and they looked at the different touch points and they found that a simple change of only 12 minutes of IT's time had a multi-million-dollar impact instead of the billions of dollars they were looking to invest in revamping the system. And the only reason they identified that was because they spent the time to look at the problem itself. And when they realized the problem, they found a very simple touch point that had a high business impact on sales revenue and therefore a high ROI in investing time. So journey mapping helps you understand those problems, helps you recognize the impact to the business. And as soon as you understand the impact to the business, you can put dollars next to it. You understand it's sales revenue or it's optimization and process efficiency or it's headcount changes that could be optimized for organizations that ultimately drive profitability. That's the true ROI of what you're trying to change. And once you understand that and align that back to your digital workplace evolution of mobile work anywhere, anytime, or the ability to improve your knowledge or collaboration capabilities, now you can understand, okay, this is going to impact the business in these 3 areas with these dollars and cents, and you can actually track that as you roll this out and adjust to ensure that it takes place. That is hard and a real ROI, and that drives true impact to a business. Soft ROI and not going through that exercise of road mapping and journey mapping as a part of that often leads to failed enterprises where they think they find value and they try to justify that value, but in reality, the digital workplace is not maturing, is not impacting the business, and it becomes an endless cycle. Hence, the 83% of the budget being restricted to only keeping the lights on.
Okay, I think you may have just inspired this question, Ken. Who should be included for a productive road mapping session?
Great question on who should be included. If you're not familiar with road mapping, it's a matter of depth in what you're trying to assess. So a digital workplace roadmap as a whole needs to be aligned at the executive level. That doesn't mean the CIO and the CEO need to be the ones owning this, but their technical strategies, or at least their business strategies as an organization, need to touch into your digital workplace. If they're looking at places for innovation or optimization as a business as a whole, your digital workplace strategy should align to that. So definitely very much an executive level input, or at least, if nothing else, a member of the executive group who is owning and understanding and aligning, agreeing to the alignment of your digital workplace roadmap. Oftentimes, the IT group tries to own this, and they fail because they don't involve the business. And sometimes they don't do that because of their hesitancy of the business wanting too much or not understanding timetables associated with that. But true successful road mapping involves both the business and IT, and it's actually more dominant on the business side with support of IT rather than IT with support of the business. And the reason is that's how you identify the key impact areas. IT will own the right solutions and how to govern those solutions, but having the business involved is critical to really understand the prioritization of the impact areas. Journey mapping, for example, is a scientific method that we follow with our dedicated experts to walk through the business in a way that doesn't bog down in the long list of desires, but instead cuts through and finds the real needs of a business and helps you prioritize those so that IT can find the right solutions and apply them accordingly. So keep that in mind. If you're in IT, that's a scientific method that can help you get that information without the concerns of worrying the business will do too much. Or if you're on the business side, if you're a vice president of a business group or a director of a business group and you're looking to impact your business group, but need to figure out how to work that out without going rogue on IT, this same process can help you identify key pain points of your business while still aligning it such that it's easy for IT to consume and support you with in that process. So journey mapping, again, is a key mechanism, but it's primarily business supported by IT in the successful implementations of a digital roadmap, with executive sponsorship being aware and ensuring alignment to the holistic business objectives. Again, that's something that we can support you on. So if that's a little confusing, we're happy to take a follow-up phone call to discuss further, or if you actually want some of our experts to come in and demonstrate how this can be functional for your organization specifically, we can support you in that way as well.